He danced like fire but listened like a philosopher. For more than 60 years, Mick Jagger has stood as the heartbeat of rock and roll, the strut, the swagger, the voice that could charm and challenge in the same breath. But behind the wild energy and electric performances was something few saw. A student, a listener, a man forever studying the sound that shaped him. Mick didn't invent rock and roll. He absorbed it piece by piece from the masters before him. He listened to bluesmen, poets, and rebels, dissecting every note until it became part of him. He didn't just copy their sound. He translated their spirit, and while the world saw a superstar, Mick always saw himself as a fan, hungry to learn, to evolve, to push further. These 7 albums weren't just his favorites. They were his mentors. Each one carved a piece of his soul, molded his voice, and sharpened his instinct. From Chicago blues to British punk, these records whispered truths that even stadiums couldn't shout. After School Session, Chuck Berry, 1957, before Mick, there was Chuck Berry, and without Chuck, there might never have been a Rolling Stone released in 1957. After School Session wasn't just an album. It was a revolution. Chuck made the guitar talk, turning simple 3-chord songs into full-blown storytelling. He sang about cars, school, rebellion, and freedom, but underneath, he was writing the diary of an entire generation. Mick, a teenager in Dartford at the time, heard Chuck on the radio, and it was like lightning striking his soul. It wasn't just the music. It was the attitude, the confidence, the sense that imperfection was power. Mick once said, "Chuck taught me that rock and roll was never about being perfect. It was about being alive." Songs like School Days and Too Much Monkey Business weren't polished or polite. They were raw, clever, and real. Chuck wrote fast, played faster, and never wasted a single word, and his performance? Legendary. He duck-walked, he grinned, he owned the stage. Mick didn't copy him. He learned the secret. Rock wasn't just sound. It was movement. It was freedom. And Chuck Berry was the man who first unlocked that door. Electric Mud, Muddy Waters, 1968. This one wasn't sacred because it was flawless. It was sacred because it was fearless. Released in 1968, Electric Mud saw Muddy Waters, the king of Chicago blues, go electric and it rattled the world. He added distortion, fuzz, and psychedelic edges that left blues purists fuming. But to Mick, it was genius. He called it the sound of the blues refusing to die quietly. The Rolling Stones literally got their name from a Muddy Waters song. He was the foundation, the father figure of British blues. Without him, there would be no Stones, no Zeppelin, no Clapton, just silence. Mick admired how Muddy didn't cling to the past. He pushed it forward, even when it made people uncomfortable. Songs like I Just Want to Make Love to You and Mannish Boy sounded reborn, louder, dirtier, braver. Muddy proved that honoring tradition didn't mean standing still. You could respect your roots and set them on fire. That lesson became part of Mick's DNA. Revolver, The Beatles, 1966. They weren't rivals. They were reflections of each other. When Revolver dropped in 1966, the Beatles stopped chasing hits and started rewriting the rules. They turned pop into art, and Mick, competitive as ever, took notice. He didn't envy their brilliance. He respected it. He once said, "They made us all raise our game, and that was a good thing." Songs like Eleanor Rigby and Tomorrow Never Knows sounded like transmissions from another planet. Even Taxman bit harder than anything before. Every track took a risk, and that inspired Mick. The Beatles weren't afraid to fail, and that fearlessness pushed the Stones to evolve too. After Rubber Soul came Aftermath. After Sgt. Pepper came Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Revolver taught Mick that success wasn't about playing safe. It was about daring to go further. Don't give the crowd what they expect. Give them something they never imagined. Live at the Apollo, James Brown, 1963. If there was ever a sermon of sound, this was it. Released in 1963, Live at the Apollo captured James Brown at his most divine. It wasn't a concert. It was a spiritual event. James didn't perform. he transformed. Mick watched from across the sea and realized something vital. Performance wasn't just singing, it was belief. James had rhythm, charisma, and absolute control. Every scream, every step, every collapse on stage was choreographed chaos. Emotion sharpened into art. When Lost Someone stretched past 10 minutes, the crowd became part of the ritual. The cape, the revival, the resurrection, it was theater and music fused into one. James Brown taught Mick the sacred rule of the stage. Every night matters. Every show is the last one. You don't walk on stage. You arrive. Mick carried that lesson into every Rolling Stones show for the next 60 years. Highway 61 Revisited, Bob Dylan, 1965. Bob Dylan didn't just write songs. He rewired the way musicians thought. When Highway 61 Revisited hit in 1965, rock became literature. Lyrics mattered. Meaning mattered. Mick, known for swagger and rhythm, suddenly saw that words could punch as hard as guitars. Like a Rolling Stone, 6 minutes of venom, poetry, and truth changed the game. Dylan didn't care who understood him. He cared about saying something real. Mick admired that courage. He once said, "Dylan didn't chase approval, he chased honesty." The album's messy, surreal, unpredictable spirit showed Mick that rebellion and intelligence weren't enemies. They were partners. Rock could be wild and wise at the same time. What's Going On? Marvin Gaye, 1971, Grace Under Fire. That's what What's Going On was. Released in 1971, it wasn't loud or angry, but it was a revolution. Marvin Gaye wrapped protest in beauty. He sang about war, pain, and injustice with the gentleness of a prayer. Mick once called it the most honest album ever made. Because Marvin didn't scream, he ached. Songs like Mercy Mercy, Me, and Inner City. Blues felt like whispered heartbreak. The lush strings, the layered vocals, it sounded like a man talking to his soul. Marvin showed Mick that music could protest without shouting. It could be soft and still change hearts. That balance between strength and sensitivity became a guiding light for Mick. London Calling, The Clash, 1979, full circle. By 1979, punk had exploded, spitting in the face of rock's old guard. But London Calling by The Clash did something more. It didn't destroy the past. It rebuilt it. The album mixed punk, reggae, ska, and rockabilly, furious yet thoughtful. Joe Strummer's voice wasn't polished, but it was pure truth. Mick, now in his mid-30s, didn't see The Clash as rivals. He saw them as torchbearers. They reminded him why rock mattered. It was about freedom. Tracks like Clampdown and Train in Vain were angry and emotional, smart and street-level. It wasn't fame they wanted. It was purpose. Mick respected that deeply, because that's how he started too, chasing meaning, not money. London Calling was proof that rock wasn't dead. It was evolving, and Mick, the eternal student, was still taking notes.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.